There is no moderator, so I'm just going to go ahead and welcome them to the stage. Okay, first off, we'll start with the judge since he can keep me in jail. So we'll start with our great judge, Judge Nathan Todd Young, good friend. And I see we have our Jennifer Davidson, our county manager. And then we'll mix it up and we'll go with that wonderful Mark Jackson. He's a good guy. He's done a great job as district attorney. We've known each other a few years, so we've both been on a few, not competing against one another, but a few volleyball courts with our daughters over the years. So with that, we have SHARLA HALES, formerly school board, but our county commissioner now. And then we'll give the control over to the great sheriff, Dan COVERLEY. That way, he can have fun with all of you. And I'll escape while he's actually here so I know I can get away. Just kidding.
You really want me running this?
Right.
That should go to you.
Oh, control. All right. We want to have a seat. Do we have a PowerPoint presentation? Otherwise, we, as elected officials, and me will be lost. Cool. Okay.
Oh, let's take it down then.
Oh, yay. I can ad-lib. Okay. Jennifer Davidson, County Manager. Speaking of poised to have a positive impact and solve problems for this community, I stand before you today on the shoulders of giants. And I don't make that statement lightly. The Justice Center has been an issue for this community, a critical issue for this community, golly, for as long as I can remember in my professional career, and certainly the professional careers of the individuals joining me on this panel today extend a lot longer than mine. But I am so honored to be speaking to you about the wonderful work that Douglas County is doing to solve this problem. So let's chat about the Justice Center. Also with me here today is Judge Young, the Honorable Judge Young, District Attorney Mark Jackson, Commissioner SHARLA HALES, Vice Chairwoman, and our wonderful Sheriff, Dan COVERLEY. We're all going to cover different aspects of this facility. I'm a fast talker. I think that's going to be a positive thing today because we have a lot of ground to cover in this presentation and some exciting things to share with you, including some never seen before images of what will be eventually our new Justice Center. All right. Nobody wants to look at my picture. Okay, so speaking of a critical issue for this community for a long time, those of you who have been in this community since the 80s knows that the existing Judicial Law Enforcement Center was constructed in 1980. And from the moment that building was constructed, Douglas County acknowledged that there was going to be a future problem for this community, that eventually we were going to outgrow that public facility. And we know that to be true of all of our public facilities. Of course, as communities grow, we are going to outgrow the spaces in our offices. But that definitely has an impact on the community in a variety of ways, which the judge will go through, as will District Attorney Mark Jackson. So we've been talking about this particular issue since 1980, but we really started to build up some momentum and notice some deficiencies in the space needs of that building. At around 2011, 2012, this conversation really picked up steam. And the county invested quite a bit of money into looking at and analyzing the space and determining what the needs of the users of the building, the programming, was going to be for the future. And we looked at those programming needs at different population estimates and caps. I won't bore you with this timeline. I think it's very interesting in the sense that a lot of work goes on behind the scenes before you, as members of our community, see the county commission pull the trigger on making a decision. And we thank them for their courageous leadership on this particular issue. All right, so current challenges. Again, I'm not going to bore you with this laundry list because extensively these issues are going to be addressed by the users of this building. And they can talk about the stories and the impacts on both their offices as well as the individuals who come into that space and interact with them on a daily basis. All right, cost estimates. This is the boring part of the presentation, but also kind of the exciting part of the presentation. This issue really came to a head for Douglas County recently because of the cost of construction. Why pull the trigger now? because we have to. It is becoming incredibly more expensive to build. Anyone in this room who's had to build anything of significance recently realizes that inflation is hitting us on multiple fronts. For the Justice Center, every year that the County Commission delayed this project after 2021 resulted in a cost escalation for the project of $3 million a year. That's huge. At some point, if the County Commission did not pull the trigger and make the decision to build this building, it was going to become unaffordable for us to do so. We would not have sufficient capacity in the general fund to construct this project. Ultimately, right now, we looked at a variety of scenarios to try to save funding. We looked at remodeling the existing JLEC space. That would have required us to construct a parking garage. Nobody wants to throw money at a parking garage. We would much rather see that money spent on the programming and the building itself. And so ultimately, the County Commission made the decision to purchase land over off of Buckeye, which we're really excited about. We have 60 acres over there. Not only will that space be utilized for this building, but also we're looking at the future space planning needs of the county in general at that location. When we made the shift to that location, we started to drill down on cost estimates and actual programming needs, and the budget today for this project is $55 million. That's an incredibly significant number for Douglas County. Douglas County has never spent this kind of money on any type of infrastructure in the county's history. This is huge. We have never financed on this level. All right, I mentioned the land purchase. This is about how much cash we have in this project currently. It's around $9 million spent. And we are currently breaking ground on GMP1. How many people have driven by Buckeye recently? Saw some dirt moving? Woohoo, making progress. We're grubbing, clearing, bringing in utilities, paying cash for what we can. We're utilizing a construction manager at-risk project process. We have some wonderful partners in the room that I do want to acknowledge. Core Construction has been selected to work with us on this. Yay! We're so excited to have Core on board. They did wonderful work on this building, resulting in significant savings to the agencies with which they work. And already the process is working well. As a result of the Seymour process and the innovative methods and conversations we're having with Core, we have identified $100,000 worth of savings in this phase 1 of improvements. And I challenge this team to come up with at least $3 million, no pressure. All right. Also, we need to acknowledge in the audience today our design architects, TSK. Oh, Kevin's right there. I'm sorry, the lights. Yeah, so thank you so much. The wonderful conversations about programming, space planning, the most intricate game of Tetris I have ever seen played in my life has been involved with the stakeholder conversations and the design architects making maximum use out of every last inch of that building. And we're very grateful for their patience with us. We have some high expectations. Sorry. Okay, GMP1, said that. Okay, moving on. Proposed financing for this building, I mentioned how much cash we've paid to date. Ultimately, we do intend to debt finance $51 million, which is the cost to actually construct the building. We're holding strong at that $51 million price point. Hopefully it comes in just under that. All right, so this Justice Center conversation, really when I talk about standing on the shoulders of giants, for me, this conversation began in 2017 when I became the assistant county manager, and then when I moved into the county manager's office a year ago. I had a conversation with Scott Morgan. One, I recruited him to join my team because I knew we could do some really exciting things. But also, one of the major reasons why I wanted to see him on my team is because his work on the community center. How many people have been in the community center, love that building? That is, talk about a love letter to a community, that is where it's at. Multi-generational facility, Scott did it well, and he did it well with the core team, core construction team, Seymour Method, really value added to our community. And he started first, and the best advice he ever gave me is, Jennifer, if you want to build it and do it well and do it right, you need to become an expert in justice centers. I said, that's no small order. How do you do that, Scott? He said, you need to tour as many facilities, lay eyes on as many things. You need to become intimately familiar with paint samples and doorknobs and all the things. And that's what we did. We toured a lot of facilities. We spoke to a lot of users and stakeholders of other buildings. We got their perspective. We walked away with their lessons learned, positive things, what to do, where to put outlets on certain walls. Right? We talked to building maintenance, all the way up to judges, right? And we got their perspective on how to get the most out of this project. Very valuable experience. Also in this process, we engaged the public in a public survey regarding the exterior elevations. I mentioned to you how that went. For the most part, we got a lot of positive feedback and overwhelming support for the project, which has been a good thing. Ultimately, when the public weighed in, which, by the way, Douglas County is doing this thing now where we engage with the public in public surveys, and we've had a lot of success with this. We're having some good positive feedback. Around 900 participants in this survey indicated a preference for design 1, which led us to the selection of this final design right here. There is some tweaking going on this building still. You may see a couple of changes to some landscaping and some other things. Recently, the addition of that, I'm going to call it a glass panel, in the largest portion, the stairwell portion on the, if I'm looking head on, it would be on the right side of the building, got added as a result of conversations about light. That stairwell is going to be how juries who are assembled access courtrooms upstairs. And so we wanted to make the jury experience a positive one and not have them walk upstairs through cinder block as they go and engage in their public service. Jury duty is always a wonderful, positive experience for everyone. So we wanted to make it that much more enjoyable with some light being casted into that stairwell space. All right, floor plans. I am not going to go terribly much in detail. These will be posted on our website if you want to look at them in greater detail. If you have questions, I'm happy to engage with you. I think what you want to see are some interior conceptual designs. So this is the work of TSK. This is the experience for users as you first enter security in the building. In Judge's portion of the presentation, what you're going to see is the user experience today. How many people have been to our JLEC Center, had to go through that space? Yeah, it leaves something to be desired. We have one metal detector at the moment. We definitely have a backlog of security. We have overflow problems in the parking lot. This new space will allow us to divide security into 2 user lines as they funnel into the building. The building itself is going to be bright, open, airy. Commissioner Hills is really going to speak to that. We're very excited about how individuals are going to feel when they're engaging with justice in this space. Here is your exiting security. You're going to enter the lobby/waiting area. And those public counter spaces are the clerk's offices. Both for Justice Court and District Court are downstairs. Towards the end, all the way down at the end, will be the District Attorney's office. Again, light, bright, airy, wonderful windows. We're super excited about this. As you turn around, opposite the public counters are the stairs to go upstairs. And this is one of my favorite images. This gives you upstairs the courtrooms. We will have 4 courtrooms upstairs, 1 flex space/courtroom meeting space downstairs, directly off of security. But the design architects did a really good job of bringing the materials from the outside of facade of the building into the space itself through the windows, which really is awe-inspiring and, again, helps set the tone for what users of the building should expect when they're in the courtroom spaces. All right, again, facing the opposite direction, more of those wonderful windows, and the view from there is going to just be spectacular. We have multiple meeting spaces upstairs, a lot of flex space planned, and the ability for different types of programming and innovative use of the space and technology upstairs, for sure. And this is one of the courtrooms, one of the conceptual designs. Again, we're trying to bring light into the space and definitely get people feeling positive about the user spaces. the perspective from the judge. And this is a smaller courtroom space, a hearing room. And again, the perspective from the judge. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Judge Young to talk about why this project was so important from your perspective, sir.
Are you just pushing right there?
Yes, sir.
All right, well, good afternoon. I'm Todd Young, as I've been introduced. I work for you. I'm the district court judge in Department 1 of the 9th Judicial District. And I'll talk to you about why we really need this space. We've all been told we have about 8 minutes each, so I'll try to go through this quickly, warning you that, telling an old courtroom lawyer that they have 8 minutes is a pretty good way to get 45 minutes out of me. So let me see what I can do for you here. One of the primary issues that the judges were concerned about overall was the security of the courtroom, the security of the judges, the security of our staff, of our clerks, the security of the jurors, security of witnesses, security of other court employees, deputy district attorneys, the defense attorneys. So right now, in what's referred to as the JLEC building, which is the Judicial and Law Enforcement Center, that's where we're located right now, the public can get right, my door has a lock on it, but the public can go right up to that door and right to a window. That's not secure. Right now, jury assembly is done in an extra room downstairs when the sheriff's office is not using it. They call it their training room. Jury assembly is when we're going to start a jury trial and I have to bring in 120 or 150 people from the community to select a jury from. Where do I put them? Where do they gather? Where do I put them so that they're not mingling with witnesses, so they're not mingling with defendants or defendants' families or victims' families? We don't really have a jury assembly room right now. We were scheduled to start a trial this week. Actually, we're going to start tomorrow, and the sheriff is using his training room. The other department is using their courtroom. I had no place to put 150 people other than in the hallway. That's not a good plan. It's not secure. It's not good for them. It's not good for the security of a trial. This new building gives us a jury assembly room downstairs that's a flex room that is also going to be used for some other court purposes that I'll tell you about in just a minute. Security for staff, making sure that the court clerks are safe, making sure that the district attorney and the defense attorneys, when they go to the restroom, they're not in there with a defendant who they are prosecuting, or a victim who is angry at the defense attorney, or that the defendant and the victim are not having to be in the same restroom at the same time. Right now, that's the existing situation. Safety for the public. It gets really crowded upstairs. On a typical Monday morning, Judge Gregory in Department 2 may have 30 people waiting to get into his courtroom. The drug court, which is in Department 1, which is where I am, it's a specialty court. There are probably 65 people waiting to get into that courtroom. They're all mingling together. Those 65 people are all defendants in drug cases who have been deferred into a program that requires them to go to counseling, requires them to show up and see a judge every week. It requires them to go to meetings, all kinds of other requirements. There's no place to put them except in Department 1. So they occupy, not my courtroom, but the courtroom that I'm in. It's your courtroom, actually. But they occupy that courtroom. That means I can't have court every Monday morning. There's a drug court judge in there who's using that room. So it means that the cases in Department 1 have to be put off to another time, or if I'm going to start on a Monday morning, I can't start till 10 or 10:30. That slows the process down. It takes hours out of the courtroom. Then the parking issue as far as security goes. Right now, the judges, the Justice Court, the 2 district court judges, the district attorney, we all park on the public street, on Water Street. That's not safe. That's not secure. I will tell you, I have come out of the building at night. We often work late. I've gone down there where it was dark and seen two young men leaning up against my car. Hi, Judge. I had no idea who they are. They knew who I was. And an incident didn't happen. They got up, kind of moved away from my car. But that's the exposure we have. That's the lack of security that we have. Another occasion, I sentenced someone to life in prison. They were part of what we might kind of euphemistically call the Mexican mafia. And I put them in prison for life. They had brought a couple dozen family members to court to watch what was happening. They were all very upset with the sentencing. When I pulled into that parking space that I have the next morning, there was a young woman out there taking a picture of my car. That shouldn't be what happens. So the new building will have secure parking for court staff, for the judges. We'll have an area for jurors to park. Space. As I was indicating a minute ago, there's not enough courtrooms. In addition to the drug court, we also have a hearing master who hears child support cases for Judge Gregory and I. There's no place to put them except in our two courtrooms. So when the hearing master comes to hear child support cases, we can't have court. And again, that just delays justice for everyone else who needs a trial, everyone else who needs to come in and see the judge, because we don't have a space to put them. That's the specialty court, the child support. Now, the Supreme Court has ruled that there have to be juries in many justice court cases. The justice courts don't have places to have a jury. They don't have a room for jury assembly. They don't have a jury box. They did have one that was taken out by a former JP, but the justice of the peace has to be able to have a place to put a jury. Where do you sit them? And then where do they take a break? How do you separate the jurors from the defendant so that they're not all mingling at the same place and same time? You know, I've had many murder trials in Department 1. And what happens every time we take a break in the morning for the court reporter and the clerk to just get a break, for the jurors to get a break, people get up, use the restroom, just take a couple minutes to stretch, everybody walks right out the same door. The jurors go out there, they go right out into the hallway. Who goes with them? The victims' families, the defendants' families, the defendants' counsel, the prosecutors. They all go right out into the same area. That's a really bad idea, to have everybody mingle during a trial. You try to keep them separated, but we don't have the space to separate them. We need that space. Clerks and files. I'll show you a picture of where the clerks keep their files and all in just a minute. Court finance. We have a court finance officer. We have to report to the Nevada Supreme Court regularly. We keep records of all of the money that we bring in. You know, you think about people paying fines and administrative assessments and the expenses that we have. We have a finance person. Where is her office? She's in what used to be a closet. Now, she doesn't complain, but it's packed in there. And there's barely room to turn around. Imagine if we were recruiting you for a job and we said, hey, we have a great job for you, and you can have a lovely desk inside this closet, and you can almost be able to get a chair in there too. So that's the current situation. Right now, prisoners through the law clerk's office. When the sheriff's department brings prisoners up into the courtroom, they come up through a back hallway, kind of the back of the building. Sometimes they come into like a little Sallyport waiting area, but if they have men and women, they divide them, and they walk some of the prisoners right through my law clerk's office. Now, that's an attorney who works for me, who does research, who helps me with drafting things and all. And they're bringing prisoners through this office. That's not secure for the sheriff's deputy. It's not secure for the prisoner. It's not really secure for the employee that I have, whose office that is. That's a bad idea. We'll fix that. This is just an example of judges parking. I'm sorry we don't have a picture of Mr. Jackson's car. I pointed out to you all. Jury parking. Right now, jurors just park in the back of the building. If there are 2 jury trials going on at the same time, one in each department, there's not enough space for jurors to park. When we're assembling jurors, if Judge Gregory has 140 people coming in and I have the same, there's not that many parking spaces out there. So people have to park down the block, they have to park away from the building and then walk in. Not good if it's snowing or raining, but it's also not good to make citizens feel like when they come to do their civic duty as a jurors, and that's what jury service is. It's your civic responsibility. We ought to be able to give them a place to park that's secure, and we also ought to be able to tell them that when they go to their car for a break or at night, they're parked in a spot where the defendant's family can't follow them to their car to see what they're driving. And so that's a problem that we're solving. Crowding at the entrance. You can see what it's like when people are just trying to get into the building. There's one metal detector there. People line up and they go literally out of the building sometimes and have to stand out there waiting to get in as they come in through the security process. It's very difficult for them. It puts a lot of pressure on the security people who are trying to scan people to get into court because they all need to be in there at the same time. And remember, there are days when you may have 65 or 70 or more people who all have court at the same time and who are all trying to get through that entrance. And believe me, when court starts at 9, most of them show up about 8:52. So, these are entrances into the 2 different district court rooms. There's an entrance into the last one on the far right is the entrance to the Justice Court Clerk's office. But that's the only security. It's a rolling credenza sort of a thing, table, that is on wheels. And that's what people have to go through. There is another magnometer up there. And oddly enough, we have found people all the way who've gone through security downstairs, they get upstairs and they still have a knife. That's not a good process either. So we need to fix that, and we're working on that. This is what the inside of the courtroom looks like on a drug court day. Look at the number of people there. And when there aren't enough chairs to sit everybody down, that's an inconvenience. It's not polite, and it's a security problem. The in-custody male and female restrooms. When we have people in jail who are waiting to come into the courtroom, and they're back in a holding cell, and they need to go to the bathroom, they go into the jury room to use the bathroom if that's where they get taken and they have to go quickly, and there's not time for the sheriff's deputy who's serving as the bailiff to take them out into the back hallway, down the elevator, all the way back into the jail, and get them back there. People sometimes don't have that much time. So they end up using the restroom that the law clerk uses, that my staff uses. ADA requirements. Folks, it's your courtroom. This is going to be your building. As I started, I said, I work for you, and I mean that. But this is your building. It ought to be accessible to everyone. If you're in a wheelchair, you ought to still get to be a witness. Look at how these witness stands were designed. You can't roll the wheelchair up there where the witness sits. Also, you ought to get to be a juror. Why, if you're in a wheelchair, can't you go and sit with the other jurors? We ought to include people, regardless of their disability. We all have our own disabilities, right? You're probably thinking about one of mine right now. But you ought to be able to serve on a jury without having to be singled out and set somewhere special where you sit out in the middle of the room because you're in a wheelchair. That's not right. These courtrooms, the way they were designed many years ago, didn't take that into account. We bought some temporary ramps that we put up, but they're difficult to use. I've talked about ADA requirements. I'm gonna try to move through that fairly quickly. That elevator, we had someone go down in a courtroom not very long ago, and the EMTs came and had to put him on a stretcher and get him out of there. They couldn't get the stretcher in the elevator. That's not right. What you see there on the right side, many years ago I bought, for both courtrooms, hearing assist devices. When I first became a judge, about 14 years ago, I had practiced law in this building for 30 years before that. And I always kind of sat back in the same area in Department 1, and would just kind of sit back in the corner, and I noticed I could never hear a dang thing that was going on in court sitting back there. You couldn't hear the judge, you couldn't really figure it out. So when I became a judge, I said to the technology person who works for the court, I said, you know, we need to check the micro or the speaker in this room and make sure that speaker is working. He went, I said, oh, that speaker's great. There's no wires to it. 30 years, they never ran wires to the speaker. Government's not a bad thing. The electrician was the problem there, I think. Government electrician, obviously. But, so this is the clerks. You know, I might be a great judge, I might be a really lousy judge, but nobody will ever know if my clerks don't do their job. And I can't work without the services of some of the best clerks anywhere in the state. I'm going to tell you how good your clerks are. I'm going to do a little bit of an aside. All of our clerks go to a training every year statewide. Clerks from all over the state come, and I had a judge from Las Vegas call me. She was presenting at the clerk training. She said, I want to know what you do in Douglas County with your clerks, because your clerks were the only ones who were able to answer the questions in this presentation and who had any decent questions of their own. Those are people who work for you. They're great, and they're cramped in. They have had to share desk space with each other so that they don't even all have their own desks. This is the evidence storage room. Now, when we have a trial and we receive evidence, the clerks are the ones who receive the evidence. And if you've ever been in a trial or anything, you see the clerk mark it as Exhibit 1 or Exhibit 20 or whatever. And then the clerk takes responsibility for that item of evidence. It can be anything from a gun to a bag of cocaine to child pornography to animal parts. That's not all the same case. But all of that, the clerk is responsible for storing. And it is the clerk's responsibility to make sure that evidence is kept safe, because if there is an appeal or if the case has to be retried at some point, the custodial integrity of that evidence is essential to having a new trial or a fair trial. This is what it looks like in the clerk's evidence storage room, because we don't have any place to put anything else. There's not even room for more shelving. All right, one of the more recent trends that is happening in law, not just in Nevada, but all around the country, is a really good thing, and that is access to justice. I've served for many years on the Supreme Court's Access to Justice Commission. And one of the things about access to justice is making sure that everybody has the opportunity to come to court, whether you have money or whether you don't have money, whether you can afford an attorney or whether you can't afford an attorney. You should have the ability to see a judge, to have whatever the problem is decided by that impartial, neutral magistrate. Well, the Supreme Court has pushed down toward all of us the importance of having self-help centers. Now, we are in the process of installing electronic filing so that we're not going to deal with paper all the time anymore, and you can file your documents electronically. It won't take as much space to store that, although the district courts are regarded by law as permanent custodians of everything that gets filed. But the self-help center is designed to have computer kiosks so that people can come in. All of the documents filed with us, except in rare cases, are public record. You should be able to come into the courthouse and see what got filed in a case. It's open to the public. I saw Kurt Hildebrand back there. The news gets to see what is public record, and they should be able to come in and look that up. We will have, this new building has a real self-help center. We had to take out part of our storage or our copy room in order to create what we have now. But we will have a real self-help center where people can come in, have computer kiosks, can look up forms that they need so that they can represent themselves on simple things. If you don't have a lot of money, you shouldn't have to spend thousands of dollars to get divorced if you don't have a lot that you're arguing over. If you can't afford an attorney, you should still get to argue for custody of your children. And so we'll have forms that assist people to do that, and they can come in and find those, fill them out, PDF, right there at the Self-Help Center. And thank you very much.
Before I stand up, I want to start here. Very recently, we had a Board of Commissioners meeting, and it was regarding the 3 design options that were put before our board, and they picked the design that you saw. As part of the public comment, I spoke, and I started off that when we started this process around 2014, that I didn't have a gray hair on my head. And so here we are 10 years later, so I was half jokingly trying to attribute every single gray hair to it. And Vice Chair Hales was actually presiding over that particular meeting, and she came back to it. So I wanted you to know that this photograph is from 2015, which is 1 year. And I wish I still looked that young, but it is what it is. I want to talk a little bit about the District Attorney's Office. We are a big part of the Justice Center, and it's kind of important to know where we came from, where we are now, and where we're going to be in 2 years when they open up the doors to this new Justice Center. The very first slide, and one of the first slides under Jennifer's presentation, part of the presentation, was the timeline, and I don't know if you could read those numbers, but in 1980, when they opened up the JLEC building, the population of Douglas County was 19,400. I think you all know that we have increased 2.5-fold since. As a result of a population increase, we have also had an increase in our caseloads. The Sheriff's Office, their calls for service exceed 30,000 calls per year. Of the cases that are submitted to us either through an arrest or through a warrant submission process, non-traffic, but just your criminal cases, from your low-level misdemeanors to our highest-level felonies, we receive and process over 3,000 cases. So about 1/10 of the cases that the Sheriff's Office has to respond to. And I don't know what the personnel needs were of the District Attorney's Office in 1980 when it was servicing 19,400 people that lived in this community. What I do know is what the staffing needs are currently of our office and what I anticipate they will be over the next 20 to 30 years. My current office has 24 employees. I have 13 attorneys employed in the office that are divided between the criminal division and the civil division. We have 2 investigators, a victim witness coordinator. I'm talking about closets. The other closet in the building is occupied by my victim witness coordinator. And we work really hard about bringing justice. And And there's also an access to justice about victims, and a large part of my presentation is going to be about making this the best that we possibly can moving forward for victims that are coming into the Justice Center and seeking justice through our office. Currently, because of when they built this JLEC building, there are 9 private offices currently in the district attorney's office. That's it, 9. So if we talk about just the attorneys, there's not enough. So we've had to move out the civil division. The civil division is outside the JLEC building, across Water Street in the Boulay building. Our investigators and our victim witness coordinator are down a back hallway on the 2nd floor of the JLEC system. It is a managing nightmare to be able to bring everyone together in the same exact location is something that we are welcoming. You can see that currently we're paying over $30,000 a year in rent for the civil division. So going back to 1980, when I think Steve Thaler remembers this. He used to work as an investigator for 2 DEAs. And when he worked there, there was no security for the district attorney's office. The exterior door on the 2nd floor would be opened up at 8 o'clock in the morning and propped open for the day and then closed at 5 p.m. And if you walked into that door, which would have access for any member of the public that wanted to have business with the district attorney's office, it could be a victim, a witness, a defendant, the defendant's family. Anyone could just walk into that open door. And then what separated the staff, the legal secretaries and the prosecutors in my office from anybody else coming in was a 3-foot pony wall. Can you imagine? And it had a swinging door that you couldn't secure. And when I was a deputy district attorney in the office in the early 2000s, I recall one of the cases that I was prosecuting was a domestic violence case. It was a very serious domestic violence case. It was a felony case because the victim in the case had sustained substantial bodily injuries as a result of the abuse. And unfortunately, part of this background of this case we see too often, where we have the perpetrator, her husband, who, with the emotional abuse and the physical abuse, had separated her from her family, had separated her over the years from her friends. She had zero support system whatsoever. She had no self-esteem at all. And it took everything, all of the resources that we had available to try to keep her engaged in the system. On this particular day, we were scheduled for what's called a preliminary hearing in the East Fork Justice Court. And I had the victim in my office sitting there, and I was pre-trialing her. I was trying to go over with her about questions that I'd be asking her, and to also talk about what I anticipate the defense attorney would be cross-examining her about. And she kept wanting to pull away. It's something that we had to deal with on almost a daily basis with this victim. I noticed during this pretrial that there was some movement outside of my door, and outside of our doors at the time is where folders would be put by like a legal secretary. So again, this is when we had the unsecured office. And as I'm talking to the victim, I get the sense that whoever came up near my office had not moved. So I got up and I walked towards the door, and the door would have been right here. The victim is looking at me across the desk, and as I approached the door and looked around, it was the defendant standing right outside my doorway. He had previously fired 2 of his attorneys, and one of the issues that had to be addressed is he was deciding on self-representation. The victim, I've never seen so much fear in someone's eyes as I saw in that moment. She fled my office. The case was dismissed without prejudice, meaning that I could bring it forward again, and avoided all contact with our office, refused to speak to us, and soon thereafter moved out of state. We followed that case. She was, again, later abused by the same defendant repeatedly. She's part of the reason, that case is part of the reason that I started a special victims response team. She's part of the reason about the importance of our victim witness unit in our office. So when I was elected in 2006, one of the first things I did is working through the Board of Commissioners at that time, they gave me funds to be able to at least secure our office to prevent that, as well as countless cases where we had defendants or their family members just walking in our office and yelling and screaming at prosecutors or the legal secretaries. So, but what we don't have is secured area for our victims. We do not have a secured area for witnesses. We are constantly playing musical chairs and trying to provide a secure place for witnesses and using a conference room. And we may have the civil division that needs to meet with a client, and they're not able to use a conference room because we have a victim and a young child that are in there occupying that particular space. And that is the priority right now. With the new Justice Center, we will have dedicated spaces inside of the district attorney's office for victims as well as for witnesses. They will be kid-friendly. TSK, we've been meeting with them, they're taking a lot of notes. They know the Scott McCullough, who's going to be the project manager under the CMAR. They're aware of what our needs are, and I just really cherish, I'll tell you, TSK, CORE, I really cherish the partnership that we have, and I know that we're being heard. I know that you understand what the victims, what they need and what they go through, and I know that you're compassionate about it. So, in the caseload that we've seen since I've been elected as a DA has continued to increase. One of the things I want to talk about are some of the changes in the law, which are real important, because in 1980, there really were no victim rights in the state of Nevada. It was 3 years after they opened up the JLEC building that there were laws. They called it the Victims' Bill of Rights then, and it truly was, and it was a statutory creation by our legislature. But one of those rights was that separate secure waiting area for victims and witnesses. So had the architects or anyone had known that that was going to be a law when they were building the JLEC building prior to 1980, they probably would have built that in. But since that time, and this is it's a strange law, our legislature, sorry Kelly, anyone else that served in the legislature, sometimes they can't see the forest through the trees. So this one, they actually put it, judges' jobs are to judge. Judges' jobs are to be fair and impartial and remove themselves from the litigants on both sides. And their job is not to be looking out for the well-being of victims and witnesses when they're in the courthouse. But this particular law that was enacted by the legislature in 1983 actually put the burden on the courts. It says the court shall ensure that there's a separate and secure waiting area for victims and witnesses. The judge, again, just needs to judge. So working with the coordination, not only with the sheriff's office and the district attorney's office, it really has been falling on primarily the DA's office to take care of that. So again, we're going to have significant secure waiting areas, not only in our office, but also outside of all of the courtrooms. Do you recall seeing the elevator that was in some of the conceptual drawings? This is really important, and TSK brought this in, is we didn't want to have victims of crime in the DA's office with one of our victim advocates and then have to go upstairs and occupy the same elevator as the defendant and the defendant's family. So they have in the plans the ability for the DA's office to have the elevator open on our side with the secured keyless access card, and that will lock it from then members of the public as we use that same elevator to be able to take victims up to the second floor. And then again, there'll be staging rooms which will be secure on the second floor where all the courtrooms will be. Another important law that we don't have currently in the JLEC building is the secure lactation rooms, which are required. But that is built into the design for the new Justice Center. Marcy's Law. This was enshrined in our Nevada Constitution in 2018. You may recall, and I'm sure everyone in this room who voted in the state of Nevada voted both in 2016 to amend our Constitution and then in 2018. And this is a law that I had lobbied for over 10 years. But there's 17 separate victim rights that are set forth in Article 1, Section 8A of the Nevada Constitution. I've put 5 of them down here. So these are actually constitutional rights of victims. Again, before then, we just had statutory rights since 1983. But now we actually have constitutional rights protecting the victims, making sure that they will be free of intimidation, harassment, and abuse. Again, TSK, CORE, they're aware of these rights, all of them. And the whole design is going to be about making sure that this is designed with the victim's needs in place. And then in 2019, there was this Sexual Assault Survivors Bill of Rights that was enacted. This bill really came about as a result of the backlog of those rape test kits that you probably had read about in the news regarding the DNA. And as part of that, they wanted to put in just these rights just for sex assault survivors. There was a case out of Clark County that they added to this law that not only do the sex assault survivor have the right to be in a secured area away from the defendant and the defendant's family, but in a case where the sex assault survivor doesn't necessarily want to cooperate with the prosecuting attorney's office, where the prosecuting attorney decides that they can still go forward on the case, even without that victim's cooperation. That victim doesn't want to be in the DA's office. They don't want to be talking to the prosecutor. They don't want to be talking to our victim witness advocate. This makes sure that they have a waiting area separate from the DA's office. We're fortunate we have not had that scenario play out, but I know it has played out in other jurisdictions. So again, I can't say enough great things about what we expect. I want to thank all of the previous boards that heard from us from 2014 and this board that has turned this into reality. I have worked with a lot of county managers since I was first elected in 2006. I think it was important to all of those once we started moving in this direction in 2014. But JENIFER Davidson is the one to see this happen, and so thank you, JENIFER. And I know that Judge Young definitely shares those thoughts. 3 minutes, right? That's all we're at.
My mic, oh, there we go. At $55 million, this will be the largest capital project in the history of Douglas County. As commissioners, it has been our heavy responsibility to ensure that the need for this building justifies the huge expense and that the benefits outweigh the burdens to the taxpayers. Justice is one reason we have government. It's a foundational purpose. The preamble to our Constitution, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, and ensure domestic tranquility, do establish this Constitution of the United States of America. In comparing this Justice Center to the hugely successful and less expensive Community and Senior Center, it seems that fewer people might use this. You may be thinking that you probably won't use it much. But when people need justice and the rule of law, their needs are acute, and they are often in potentially life-altering situations. You don't know when you or someone you love may be the victim of a crime and will come to this building seeking redress, fairness, and resolution so that you can heal and move forward. You don't know when someone you love may commit a crime and come to this building seeking fairness and a path forward, working through the consequences. You don't know when your property or your business might be infringed on and need adjudication of differences so you can get on about your lives and your work. All of these situations and many others require our county government to have an effective place to meet these critical needs. We, as a Board of Commissioners, are convinced that our obligation to offer justice requires this building, and that the benefits do outweigh the expenses. We've been intentional about the name of the building. It is not the courthouse, although it will have courtrooms. It is not a law enforcement center, although it will be integral to the enforcement of laws. It is the Justice Center, a name that reflects the noble purpose of this building. We know more about justice than we did in 1916, when the historic courthouse was built. Oh, you don't need to see that. That's just notes. So you see this on the top is our historic courthouse, where we still hold our county commission meetings and have several county offices. But we know more now about justice than we did in 1916, and our architecture should reflect that, and it does. In the past, courthouses were designed to be intimidating and imposing temples of justice where people entered with fear and trembling and where justice was meted out. You see those steps that you had to climb up to get to the front doors behind the big Greek columns, and the front doors are far recessed, not a lot of windows, a big imposing building. Now, justice is more of a process. Our Justice Center is designed to be more welcoming. The entrance is more open. People of all mobility levels can enter without impediment because those stairs are there to give the look and feel of a courthouse, but they are not necessary to get into the building. The lobby and most of the rooms will have more natural light because of all the windows, and therefore will feel and look warmer. From the large lobby, people can look out and see our iconic mountains, which those in the valley love looking at and those at the lake love living in. The natural beauty of our surroundings offers comfort and peace, and those views will be an important part of our Justice Center and the experience of justice for those who enter the building. I'm going to take a short aside here. You can see in this slide on the top, the 1916 photo had a cowboy in profile there. Well, Jennifer Davidson wanted to kind of recreate that look to superimpose on our new design, and so she asked our own Sheriff Coverley to get on a horse. She took a picture of him and she superimposed him on that building. But I tell you this, but I want to caution any of those of you who may think that Sheriff Coverley is a poser, pretending to be a cowboy. Nope. He is actually a cowboy. This is Sheriff Coverley 2 weeks ago at our own Douglas County Rodeo. And if there are any would-be criminals in the room, I don't know if you can see his face, but if that calf were a criminal and his face, if it were looking at you like that, you would not want to commit any crimes. So anyway, thank you, Sheriff Coverley. I want to take a minute and be a voice for all of us in this room and for all of the residents of Douglas County to thank the members of the team who have taken an incredible amount of time and care in designing this building. It's been mentioned that this has been a decade in the making or more, so many thanks to the previous county managers and county commissioners who laid the groundwork for this. Many thanks to TSK, Kevin Kemner, and to CORE, Travis Combs. And many thanks to the team who have been meeting for more than an hour, monthly, weekly, for the past year and a half to make sure that this expense that we are undertaking on behalf of our taxpayers is well spent. I want to mention Sheriff Dan Coverley has been in these meetings, even though his people aren't going to have permanent place in this building. I want to mention Judge Perkins, who spent a lot of time laying the groundwork for this building. Judge Gregory and Judge Young have shown their deep care and dedication to the children, the disadvantaged, and the vulnerable in our community by carefully planning for the court programs that serve them, CASA and SAFE. The amount of care and thought and advocacy our judges have undertaken is impressive. District Attorney Mark Jackson has been an excellent advocate for his team. I have watched as he made sure that his team has the workspace accommodations they need, but I have also seen him be unselfish and careful not to seek too much. Also, he told you about the elevator, but I don't think he told you it was his idea to finally figure out how to create that problem of one elevator needing to serve both the public and his people and the victims. It was his creative idea, and that was excellent. Scott McCullough, project manager, he is a true asset to our county in his knowledge and his dedication to getting the work done right and in budget. And finally, Jennifer Davidson, what a treasure we have in our county. She has been incredibly thoughtful, comprehensive, and careful. Her commitment to excellence is unparalleled, and her leadership is exemplary. Join me in thanking this team.
All right, what I'm not going to do is tell any of Scott Morgan's jokes while I'm up here. So one of the pictures that Judge Young showed was the amount of people, the volume of people coming in and out of the courthouse. There's one lane there. We have one magnetometer and an x-ray, kind of like going through your TSK or TSA line at the airport. And that's just for, and he talked about the volume of people coming in to go to court. The building also serves anybody coming into the sheriff's office to go to records, to get a CCW or get a report, that come in and file a crime, to get a crime report, or need help from report a crime. Anybody that needs to go to our jail division to put money on books for an inmate or to visit an inmate. It also, everybody that's on alternative sentencing, which is the pre-sentence supervision from the Justice Court, comes through there. And if you're need to talk to a detective or get an interview or stuff. So the volume, that's a huge issue. And it's depending on the time of day and what day of the week it is, it's really, really high. And then at times there's not much going on. But that is a big issue. And the security for the building is very, very dire, okay? There's all across the country, you hear of judges and prosecutors that are ambushed and acts of violence are committed on them outside of their courtrooms as they're coming and going from the courtroom and stuff. And so providing a safe avenue for the judges and the prosecutors to go from the building that they work in and safely get into their cars and get out of there is huge. So that is a very big concern. I know it's a concern from them, and it's also something that I worry about too. As the courts and the DA's office exit the JLEC building, then that will provide an opportunity for the sheriff's office to expand. In 1980, I was thinking about it as we looked at the timeline, the sheriff's office probably had about 45 deputies working at that time. Now I have 110 sworn and probably another 20 non-sworn personnel that work in the sheriff's office. And so we have space needs, just like the Judge Young talked about and DA Mark Jackson talked about. Our biggest need right now is in our investigations division. And so with this new Justice Center, it will allow us to remodel the JLEC Center, to expand my investigations division, to provide us to get some new interview rooms in there, and one specifically geared toward to be able to interview children and provide them a safe environment that we can talk to them and they can talk to us about the stuff that they don't want to talk to us about, okay? And it will make us much more efficient. It will create, we have also, you saw a picture of their evidence room. We have 3 times as much evidence in our evidence vault as the courts do, and so we struggle with that issue also. And so the need is there. And so I'm excited for the new Justice Center, and I'm excited for the opportunity that will provide to the Sheriff's Office to expand. Also in the building, as I talked about alternative sentencing, they are cramped, and that will allow them to expand their operation and to better serve the community. And then there's some other needs within the county. Our emergency manager needs some space. If we envision creating a training room and an EOC type of a place where if we're not in a critical incident in the county and we haven't opened up our emergency operations center, it will serve as a training room for the Sheriff's Office and to be able to do that. And then if we do need to have an emergency operations center, that we can turn that into that. So that's been discussed about too. And there's some other needs. So we'll be working with Jennifer to solve those problems. So I've grown up in Douglas County. First time I went to the old courthouse was as a Cub Scout. We went downstairs, took a tour of the Sheriff's Office, and it has changed immensely from back there in the mid-'70s when I did that to now, but the needs have changed. The population has changed in the state. The laws have changed. Mr. Jackson talked a lot about the legislature and the different laws, and that affects all that we can do. And I'll end with this. The judicial system is not often thought of as being a vital part of public safety in any community, but it is. It is very important. It's not just the law enforcement agency. It's not just the sheriff's office is out there responding to calls for service. We have a small, although very important part of it, but our contact with the victims and offenders is the duration is very short for the most of the time. They spend months and sometimes years working their way through the judicial system until justice is ultimately occurs, okay? And so having a building, having a place for this to happen guarantees that we will have the public safety within Douglas County that we want and what we deserve and what we need. So this is very important. So think of it as a part of public safety. So our safety is depends a lot on what we are able to do within the judiciary, which is our courts, and it's very important. So thanks for coming. I'm sure Renee will wrap this up, but this is a great project. I'm excited to be a part of it, and it's very, very much needed. Thank you.
One good question, this is probably for Jen. They say the devil's in the details. Can you tell me what the source of funding is for operation and maintenance as well as debt service? I'm asking for a friend.
Oh, am I on? Am I on? Yes? Okay. Operation, maintenance, debt service, all of it is going to be the general fund, picked up by the general fund. And this is a huge, heavy lift for the general fund. It absolutely will be. And we talked about resource limitations earlier in the day. It definitely means for Douglas County, conversations about revenue are going to have to be on the table for future discussions. We do have the capacity in the general fund to do that because we've had really smart leaders in Douglas County who were forward thinking and were very fiscally conservative in the decision making that they undertook. And I appreciate their leadership. We're probably stretching that general fund rubber band as far as we can stretch it. So definitely expect some conversations about revenue in the future.
Other questions?
Mine's not a question. I'll see if I can keep my emotions in check, but well done. Number one, option, the first option is I will publicly say, yes, that's what I voted for, and that's kind of my background. I grew up with some of you, or I watched you grow up, and it's hard to believe, but Sheriff Coverley, when I was in high school, was coming into junior high, and he could snap me like a twig now, but I taught him how to wrestle like his twin brother. A little bit of history. In 1979, I'm probably the only one in this room that watched that building get built from where I worked. I just finished a 45-year career at Bentley GE in Hughes. The location is perfect, and I'm very grateful for what you're doing. With the information you shared, I like hearing the process, my background. The building down the street, that's a little bit bigger than your building, was one of my projects. That's the Bentley building. And I had the privilege of overseeing the design and construction, and I was a liaison to the architect on that one. So the process you're taking, Scott, I envy you in that role. It's a lot of fun. I got to do it around the world. But again, I just wanted to say, no question, thank you for doing it. It's well needed. Our community has changed since I moved here in 1969. And well done. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else? Any other questions? Thank you. Do you have a question? Do you have a question? All right.
Hi, I was just gonna say that all the glass is beautiful, but is it going to be like bulletproof and you're not really gonna be able to just see into the building like that, correct?
Yeah, I can take that one. Yes, absolutely. We are planning public safety elements in the glass. Also, where's Scott? Scott Morgan will be the first. Well, McCullough Mack will also tell you we don't like looking through creeper-like at people while they're enjoying the space. So we're talking about tinting options and all of those things that will maximize views, but also protect the operations inside. Good question.
Along that line, I will tell you, many of you probably remember not that long ago, a judge in Washoe County was shot in his office through the window in his office. So we've had discussions about how the windows are designed and how they're coated and that sort of thing. So we've taken that into account. Thank you.
About 2 weeks ago, I was sorting through some old stuff, and I found my records and files and things like that from the Harvey's bombing thing. Times have changed and things like that. There was no seat belts when Jerry Maple was in the back of the car going up the hill and things like that. There was no seat belts in the back seat, so he was bouncing around as they were going up Kingsbury Grade. He said that's his lasting memory of a nightmare. But that's how much we've changed in time.
I just want to add, when we had that 19,400 population, at the time, about 75% of the cases, the criminal charging filed by the district attorney's office actually was up Lake Tahoe. And now about 75% of it is what we file down in the valley because, again, it's been the valley that has increased. So a significant change in the last 44 years.
If I can just take this opportunity to make one more plug for us local government nerds. This is proof right here. This project is proof that government can do hard things. We absolutely can have these conversations. We recognize this as a critical need for this community, and we can have political courage in times when we need to. And I just really thank the leadership of the county commissioners. This was a unanimous vote to get us to this point. At multiple points, we had to have unanimous votes to get us here. And that is tough. That is tough to sign your name on a dotted line to commit to fund a $55 million project. We're gonna have some more tough decisions for them in store, but I am excited about the future of Douglas County. We are poised to have a positive impact for our community and for this future. I think that's it. Yay, we're done.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Big round of applause for the Justice panel. And also a round of applause for all the previous panels and everyone that helped put this thing together, especially the Business Council for making this happen today and for making it happen for basically 30 years. It's also an absolute pleasure to look out in this audience and see the people that I've been seeing for so many decades. These are the people who show up. These are the people who make up our community, not only today, but tomorrow, and the people that are worried about being here in the future. We do have some people that moved in here yesterday that are probably going to move out tomorrow. But it's this group of people that we look at that have been here for a long time and are worried about the longevity and worried about the generations, the children, grandchildren, to come in this community. And I'm very grateful for that. But as part of showing up, there's another thing to show up at that happens in 27 days. Your ballot will be mailed to you. And as conservative as times as Dulles County is, the vast majority of people, 65%, will probably vote by mail. So literally, it'll be up to you to make those decisions. Which reminds me of President Lincoln, who said that the elections belong to the people. It's in your hands. It's your decision. And if you decide to turn your fire and your backside to that fire, you'll suffer the blisters of it. So remember that as you go forward and try to help us make a community for this next future, for the generations to come. So I can be proud to say to my grandchildren and look back and go, we did our best. With that, we all want to thank everyone for being here today. We also want to, of course, state, make sure if you want to have validation, over in the corner, they are validating parking. Ms. Toon is back there. And also to take your mugs and any memorabilia. Other than that, it's been an absolute pleasure to host you today. Thank you kindly for being here.